a growing number of Los Angeles County residents and even officials are demanding an in-depth investigation into the death of Robert Fuller, whose body was found hanging from a tree in a Palmdale, California park. Now, this is part of the Antelope Valley, and there is a history of neo-Nazi activity, hate groups in that area, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But I do think it's important to know about it in order to understand why people are skeptical of what the county sheriff department originally deemed in this case. They deemed that this was a suicide. The family is arguing, no, we're not buying it. We don't think this is a suicide, and we think that this should be investigated. So the 24-year-old's family is fighting to get a thorough investigation into this, and luckily there are some local politicians who are signing on to it as well. So neo-Nazi groups have been reported in this area. There have also been Justice Department actions over alleged discriminatory housing and policing practices in Palmdale and the neighboring city of Lancaster. And I think it's also important to note that less than 2 weeks before Fuller's death, there was another Black man found hanging from a tree in nearby Victorville in San Bernardino County. Authorities say they were investigating the death of Malcolm Harsh, who was found on May 31st. Harsh's family told the Victor Valley News on Saturday that the explanation of suicide does not seem plausible. So, Cenk, I wanted you to jump in on this a little bit. And it's just, this is too much. I mean, two Black men hanging from trees in, similar areas that have a history of neo-Nazi activity, who have current neo-Nazi activity. I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so I have some personal interaction with the Palmdale Sheriff's Office, too, that I could tell you about because I ran for Congress there. So, but first, let's note the literally unbelievable coincidence that Anna's talking about. So Victorville and Palmdale are about 50 miles from each other, and these two deaths happened about 10 days apart from each other. So, and I don't know if you know this. I don't know if the cops know this. I suspect that they do. There's a history of hanging Black men from trees in this country, and so to find one person who is not Black hanging from a tree in a park is incredibly unusual, right? That would make everybody go, "Whoa, what's going on here? Why in public? People don't normally do suicides in public." To find a Black man hanging from a tree should give you tremendous pause, given the history of this country. To find two Black men hanging from trees in nearby areas within 10 days of each other, and to rule both of them suicides without autopsies. Oh, come on. I mean, is there a coincidence that large on the planet? Maybe, but that wouldn't be my first assumption.
Jake, with Harsh, just to give you some more info on that, after Harsh's body was found, the county failed to do an autopsy for 12 days.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to next. So in the Robert Fuller case, they say they haven't done a full autopsy yet. I don't know what that means, because I have read countless articles on it, and so they say they're going to do a full autopsy soon. I don't know why they keep saying full. Did they do half an autopsy before? Maybe they did. Had a doctor look at him without doing an autopsy, but you didn't do an autopsy on a Black man hanging from a tree, and you just declared it a suicide. That it is more likely to be a suicide. In the case of Malcolm Harsh, he's got blood on his shirt. They say there is no other sign of foul play. Blood on the shirt is good enough for me to have an autopsy done before 12 days. I don't know what happens to a body in 12 days. I'm not an expert on it. But, and people say, oh, it's really busy in Victorville. Really? There's so many public hangings in Victorville that they can't get to the autopsies in 12 days? All of this seems so unbelievable to me. And so it is possible. It is. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but man, that would be awfully strange. And it has to be like your 12th assumption rather than your first assumption. And the important part of this, guys, is without public pressure, they would have both been called suicides, and we would have been done with it. And in this case, I don't know if the police are driven by racial animus. We don't have any evidence to that effect yet. But they're at a minimum driven by incredible laziness. Like, yeah, wrap it up. It's a black guy. Who cares? Let's go. More importantly, or more relevantly, I'm keeping it real here. Black and not rich. So if you got a black mayor hanging from a tree, they're going to do a bigger investigation. They're going to do an autopsy, etc. You got a millionaire hanging from a tree, everybody's going nuts. You think that if a millionaire was found hanging from a tree, that they would not do the autopsy for 12 days? Does a single person in America believe that? Of course not. No, but if you're not powerful, well, hey, that's a shame. So,
just to give you an example, Cenk, I know I'm definitely comparing apples and oranges here, but it's related. So Beverly Hills, California just passed a regulation indicating that no more than 10 people can publicly assemble. And of course, this is an immediate reaction in response to the Black Lives Matter protests happening around the country, right? So I'm just bringing that up because when it comes to protecting the privilege of the wealthy, when it comes to keeping them in their comfortable little, moat-surrounded bubbles, elected officials will do what it takes. But when it comes to the powerless, they don't care at all, including in cases like this, where a man's body is found hanging and for 12 whole days they refuse to do an autopsy. In the incident involving Fuller, the investigators argued that there was no footage or surveillance of what happened. But there's a reporter named Billy Jensen who actually went to the scene and was like, not buying it. And so I want to go to Jensen's tweet. The city said there were no outdoor cameras. I counted 4 facing the tree where Robert Fuller was found in Palmdale. And then asked the sheriff, did you ask for the footage from Ochoa Digital from Whispering Palms Apartments? And then, you can see in the images there that there are cameras facing the area where Fuller was found. So it just seems like there's absolutely no, there's apathy. There's nothing but apathy when it comes to these cases. And they just want to call it something and get it over with. But they need to investigate this.
Yeah, so look, Victorville and Palmdale are relatively near one another, but they're different jurisdictions. And so I don't know about Victorville at all, but I do have some personal experience in Palmdale. And so in the sheriff's department, I did show up to something that I was attending. It was a candidates forum at a Muslim American community center. And a bunch of far-right MAGA guys had showed up to disrupt the event because presumably it was at a Muslim American community center, and they knew me and called me by name. I don't know if they showed up specifically to also heckle me. So, but it didn't matter because they weren't just heckling me. They wouldn't let anyone speak at the forum. Now, as it turns out, it's a Muslim American community center, so only Democratic candidates showed up to the forum. So the sheriff had to be called in. They come in, and the people who showed up, all the officers took it incredibly lightly. The lead officer there was smiling, grinning the entire time. As, by the way, those guys were yelling horribly bigoted things. Take your hijab off. You don't belong in this country, to the Muslim attendees. One guy tried to grab at a woman's hijab, and you guys are terrorists, and you're not Americans, etc. And the whole time, the guy's smiling and refused to take him out. He said, no, that if you don't like them talking, just end the event. So they ended a congressional candidate forum because right-wingers wanted to yell bigoted things at Muslims. They're like, wow, we can't tell who's right and who's wrong. We're like, wait, they have freedom of speech. They can actually ask those bigoted questions at the end of the forum. Nope, didn't care. And eventually we had to leave. And so that's my only interaction with the sheriff's office in Palmdale. And they did not seem particularly empathetic to minorities in that situation. By the way, one of the candidates was African American. One of the right-wingers yelled at him to get off the plantation. Cops still smiling, didn't do anything about it, and instead of removing the right-wing guys looking to destroy the event, they facilitated destroying the event by telling us we could leave if we want to. So, look, that doesn't mean that's indicative of the whole sheriff's department. That's just one anecdote. But having said that, am I surprised that that office looks at a guy hanging in a park, goes, I don't see any cameras. Whatever. Let's wrap this thing up. We'll do a full autopsy later, maybe if there's tremendous public pressure. So now city officials are doing a good job of rallying around the community. But they found the guy Wednesday morning, and now the city officials and everybody else didn't spring into action until hundreds of people protested in Palmdale on Saturday. And by the way, if you're wondering, hey, maybe it's a copycat thing, and sometimes folks see it in the news and then they do likewise, and that does happen from time to time. No, amazingly, Malcolm Harsh's death was not even reported in the local news for 12 days. So there's almost no chance Robert Fuller could have even known about it.
Well, Cenk, look.
An interesting news story that there was a black man hanging from there. I mean, what the hell's going on in Victorville?
No. There's a lot going on in Victorville, Cenk. There's so much going on in Victorville. Victorville, I've been to Victorville. There's nothing happening in Victorville. Like the decision to avoid covering that story was a conscious decision. I know I'm making a pretty strong accusation. I stand by that accusation. What could possibly be happening in Victorville that's so important that finding a black man hanging from a tree doesn't make the rundown, not important enough. Anyway.
Not only didn't make the headlines, not only didn't make the front page, no news about it. None. Until then they finally find Robert Fuller hanging, and they're like, oh yeah, wasn't there a guy also hanging in Victorville? It's both damning of the media in there in the overall area as well as the police. So guys, one of the morals of this story is, for God's sake, put pressure on your local officials, both the police and the government. Without pressure, they're not going to do anything. But with pressure, hey, I might lose my job. All of a sudden, they find a way to care about you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.